there is an awful lot of very wishful thinking and magic kind of, and downright deluding of themselves, especially on Mr. Hudson's part.
They really are. What's interesting about the times is it's very much, you feel you're in a very post-medieval world. It's not a modern, formed, rational system. I mean, you know, Henry Hudson can report on his crew seeing mermaids, you know, on his second voyage, and just write it down very matter-of-factly in the account. They have visions of the north that to us would seem utterly strange.
It gets warmer as you go farther
north. It gets warmer as you go north, and there's sort of a quasi-logic to that, is that if the sun stays up all day above the Arctic Circle, you've got, the analogy was it's like having a small fire in the corner of a room. If that burns all day, that would warm the room better than just lighting a big fire a couple hours and then extinguishing again. So they had this idea that the top of the world would be hot. And so the thing is with guys like Hudson were that you don't know when they were actually believing these things, when they were torquing their evidence when they came home, because they were really trying to fulfill the expectations of people who sent them out. If they were sent out to find things that this was the way it was supposed to be, and if they wanted to get the cash to do it a second time, they were going to tend to tell the people what they found was what they were expected to find.
Champlain, on the other hand, Champlain, I think, is one of those guys that's better to be lucky than smart. Because he wasn't, I think he was smarter and better at handling people than Hudson, but he also got lucky a few times when he really needed it.
He was, I think, much more ruthless. He had a military background, for one thing, which Hudson didn't have. So when somebody crossed him, I mean, he was perfectly willing to organize a trial, sit on the jury himself, have the man convicted, then have him strangled, hung, decapitated, and put his head on a pike, and say, this is what happens when you disagree with me. But he also was a man who took just incredible calculated risks. And, you know, for whatever reason, they bore out for him. He got out on the far edge of things because I think life at that time, that was the only way, you know, progress was going to be made in terms of opportunity. He had to take these risks that we would think of today as being absolutely surreal. But he did them, and as you said, I mean, luck played a lot, you know, for him.
Was it the Ottawa River he went up with?
Yes, yeah. It was just himself, two interpreters, like French, and then one sort of reluctant participant, actually. He sent one back along the way because he needed more help. One of the things I try to get people's heads past is we have this kind of Hernando de Soto vision of, explorers, you know, it's like this massive army of, I mean, de Soto kind of cut this swath of pillage across the southeastern U.S., consuming whole villages as he went, you know, to the point of where there was almost no purpose to it except pure momentum, you know. And Champlain was never in that position as a quote explorer. He really couldn't go anywhere without the cooperation of his quote allies, the native traders. He hadn't been beyond Lake of Two Mountains in Montreal, you know, now in Montreal, until he made that journey in 1613. If the native, the Algonquin and Huron, if they didn't want him past the rapids, he wasn't going anywhere. He's been discredited because he hasn't shown up like he promised to go to war against the Iroquois twice. So he hasn't been in the country, and he has to convince these people to basically take him. You know, he needs canoes, he needs people to accompany him, and you know, his reception is pretty lukewarm, and he barely is able to get out of, you know, present-day Montreal and even begin the journey. So our idea of this powerful European and all his support, you know, swashbuckling up into the wilderness, it didn't work that way. He really needed these people's cooperation.
Now, the connection between these two guys, between Hudson and Champlain, is the story of an English boy.
Yes.
Now, where did you first hear about that? Because this was brand new for me.
The book had a circumlocution start. It's actually how I had started working on another book, which now maybe I should go finish. The motif or icon I seized upon was the Champlain astrolabe at the Canadian Museum of Civilization, which I'd seen and always struck me as this great iconic symbol of this thing that was, it's a wayfinding device. You figure out where your latitude on the surface of the earth is. And the problem is that when I went to go do it, the more I looked at it, the less it seemed like it was ever Champlain's. In order to tell people the story of, well, why did we even think it was Champlain's? Well, he supposedly would have lost it on a journey up the Ottawa River. I'd say, well, why was he on the river? Well, he was on the river because he was off to go find the Northern Sea and collect this English boy that his interpreter told him was being held by the Nibissarini people who wanted to make a gift of him to him. And this is this strange, enigmatic, obscure corner of a nation's history that, I mean, I read that and went, oh, now that's interesting. And because we're as capable as Champlain was of saying, English boy, way up in the woods, where'd he come from? Ah, Hudson Mutiny, 1611, people cast off in a boat, never seen again. And I think Champlain would have been even more impressed that even the account published at the time didn't realize that one of the people that was cast away was in fact an English boy, was John Hudson. And one of the things that you really have to keep in your head is that these were, fundamentally, they were commercial ventures. You know, this was venture capitalism in its most aggressive and risky. And these people were really flying on the seat of their pants and taking a lot of risk, not only with their own lives, but with, you know, with career and opportunity. And that really starts to bend a little bit what you report and how you report it, and then how you behave when you get sent out again, especially with a man like Hudson, where you clearly get the impression, A, he was completely impossible to control. He was always doing whatever he wanted, never mind what the money men said. But also you get people who will get to the point where, you know, they're not going to come home again unless they think they can come home with something that's going to let them go out another time. And they're willing to die trying because they know if they come home in failure, that's it. That's done for this career. I don't get this chance. And that's what pushes a man like Hudson out on the far edge.
The book is God's Mercies, Rivalry, Betrayal, and the Dream of Discovery. I've been speaking with the author, Douglas Hunter, and God's Mercies, published by Doubleday Canada.